Hello and welcome to the DPN car collection here at DPN TV, and you join us in part two of us using and getting used to the pscan diagnostic tool. Now this is part two, so if you've just found this video, it's well worth watching part one as we talk all about the diagnostic tool in general, about why we decided to buy it, and a little bit about what it can do and installing the software before we went on to use it on both of our 75s. Part two, we're going to have a look at using it in one of our 45s initially, but there's a couple of things that we want to do on the 45s as well, so we may do this video across a couple of our cars just to show you what we're going to use it for initially, because there's a few little things that have built up that haven't been a big problem, but we've wanted to access that sort of data, and now we've got this tool, we can do it. Obviously, to find out more, the website is pscan.uk, and all the information about the tool is there. As I said, I speak quite a lot in detail about it in part one. So you join us in our Rover 45 1.8 2003 silver one. The reason I've picked to start off in this car is all our other 45s come with what we call the emergency access code. Basically what that is, from what I understand, we've never had to use it, and hopefully we don't, but if you ever come back to the car and found that the key ring wasn't working, or maybe the battery had gone flat and you haven't got a battery, although you can unlock the doors, you wouldn't be able to start the car because you couldn't turn the immobilizer off. And as I understand this unique code, through a procedure of turning the key so many ways one way and so many ways the other, that's the driver's door key, following the code you've got on the procedure, you can undo the immobilizer to get you home. And on our other 345s, we were lucky enough that that code came with the car. Now on this 45, it never did. It didn't come with an original radio. We had to fit that, so we got the code there, and it didn't come with the emergency access code. So that's the main thing we want to retrieve on this car. And as I said in part one, we talked all about that in a little bit more detail, but I thought I'd start off as we're doing it on this car. But I thought what we'd do is generally use the software, because although we used it on the 75 and it's similar, if you've got a 45 and not a 75 and you've joined us on this video, then it's well worth having a look. And as I've said, we like to sort of log it as well, because it helps me as a quick reference. Perhaps it'll help you to have a look at how you do it as a refresher. If you've never had the software, it's worth seeing how it works, and also it gives us a log, especially with live data, to go back and have a little look. What we always do with the pscan is before we plug it into the car, the computer, we connect it both ends. That's the USB going off to the computer and the wire that goes off to the diagnostic port on the car. So we connect them up first, and then I plug it into the computer, and then the car with the ignition off. So what I do now is I take you down and show you where the diagnostic port is on the 45. If I bring you down under the dash to the side of the centre console, hopefully you can see there is the diagnostic port all ready to plug our little plug into. So that's where it is, behind the centre console on the driver's side. Right, so as you see, that's where to plug it in on the Rover 45. As far as I know, it's always in that place on the 45s, and as you can see, the ignition is off. The computer's switched on and warmed up. We've got our little booklet there. I've printed off the important instructions and information, and down here I've got the key, so I know what systems the 45 uses. Otherwise you're kind of guessing, and I think you can put the wrong one in to just say it can't get access, but it's far easier if you print this off of the website, and it gives you your own key of what I suppose ECUs or little computer boxes are used for each function with the 45. The important thing to make sure is the little green light is flashing, as I understand, because that tells you it's connected to the car and getting power from the car. And we've got it all installed, and you can see us talk about that in part 1, how to install it and get it working. We're using Windows XP because this is what this little laptop had on it, and it's the ideal little laptop to use. We don't need to go on the internet, and I don't think you really want to go on the internet much with XP now, but as I say, we don't need to go on the internet with it, so it can be a dedicated little computer just for this, and hopefully it'll last many years. So you put the little icon on your dashboard, so if I click that, and you'll see it opens up, and in this little thing here it says about selecting your port. Now ours automatically come up with the right one, it's the only one there, so we haven't had to worry about. Now I don't know if you had other devices connect to your PC, it would find them over that, I'm not sure, but on ours it automatically found the right one and we didn't even have to select it. So the next thing we do is select that we want English and go to next, and it'll then access the initial interface to access the different computer modules. And then up the top you've got the things that can be accessed, and also there are things there that aren't available on this car but obviously would be on others, so they're still there. And I think there's things like the power steering, the climate control, the diesel engine and the transmission would all be irrelevant on this car, but the options are there because this is just a general screen at this this stage. So I'll make that nice and big, so it's the full size of the window. So the first thing we'll have to do is have a little look at the engine ECU that manages the engine. So we click that, and down the bottom comes all the systems that the software can use, and as you can see we now need to look up which is being used in our 45. So if I come over to our little key, and it says the engine ECU for 4-cylinder on the 45s and ZS's is the MEMS3. So if we look along here in our list, and hopefully we'll be able to see that there is the right one. So once that's highlighted, then we'll click next, and it'll try and access it. At this stage the ignition's off, because I find what it always does, whether you switch it on or not, is that it says basically that it wants you to turn the ignition off and back on again normally. Now it's asking us to turn the ignition on. I'll make sure it's out of gear, although we're not going to be starting the engine at this stage. And then we'll click next. Right, so now we're in the engine management ECU computer. You've got the top one where you can get information about the ECU, and I think it also shows you the VIN as well. And what we're going to do is read the error codes. So there are our error codes, and once again we've never accessed the error codes on this car, so they could be years old, they could be to do with things that have been replaced. We also had to do a head gasket on this car, and obviously the engine wasn't running quite well, so there could be some faults there. Interestingly enough, there's a bit about the AC clutch over current. Now that was on our green car's fault code. We'll probably show you that if we have a little look at that one. And we put that down to us changing the air conditioning compressor, but it's on this one as well, so perhaps that's a common fault. Both the air conditioning systems are working fine as far as we're aware. So again, we'll take a photo of that, keep a log. We'll delete the codes, and again once we've run it, we'll have a look and see which ones come back. So that's really what you need to do. At the moment the car's running quite well as far as we know, so we would only really ride that if we were experiencing any major problems, but it would give us a tip as to what's bringing up some fault code. So they're the errors that have come up. 9 are there. So now we took a log of those. Basically what we'll do is erase those. And what's quite nice about this, when you click erase, they don't just disappear. It says you've got to push the erase button a second time to make sure that when you cancel the information out, you're definitely sure and you don't do it by mistake. So click it again. We've got no error code, so perhaps after a few weeks we'll have a little look when we've done a few runs in the car to see how it is. Right, so that's the error codes erased. What we'll now do is have a little look at the live data, and this could be quite useful, especially if you've got a problem and you want to rule something out or see if it's behaving wrongly. Again, a lot of it when it's working on it probably doesn't make much sense, but it's interesting if you are interested in this software, what it can access. It's well worth a look through when we have a look at this, and also what it could also be useful for if you've got a problem. I'll film down what the data is, and it gives you something to compare against. It also will give us something to compare against in the future. If we've got a problem, we can have a look and say, well, it was given that sort of reading, now it's very, very different. Maybe that is the problem with a combination of our own diagnostics practically, along with the error codes and what this says. What we do at the moment is we want to see all the data. If you only want to see one particular thing, if you click it there, it then gives you the live data for that particular piece of equipment. You can see there that one's now appeared, and if they're not available, they won't appear. So you click that little bit there, and it should appear if it's available. But what I tend to do is just click the plus button, and if you click the plus button, which is what we tend to do, especially for this sort of example, you get all the readings come up for all the parameters that are available. And what we do now is start the engine up and just have a scroll down and take a log. It's going to be useful for me, but it might be useful for you as well. And if it isn't of interest, you can always fast forward this bit, but it may be useful in the future. So we'll start the engine now, and we should get live data. So as you can see, the figures are starting to move. We have had the engine running, so it's not completely cold, but it has only just run for a short time, so some of the parameters might not be as good or as efficient as an engine that's just done a long run. But as I say, it's well useful to have a little look down and just see what parameters are available and what sort of readings that we're getting. What we may also do is compare this against one of our other 45s as well. I'll do this one other time when we're looking at them. So what we do now is just pick the revs up and we'll come back up, and that'll give you a little look with the revs running. Right, so one of the useful things on this live data, and will be useful for us, is what the oxygen sensors or the lambda sensors are doing in the exhaust. You've got one just after the engine and one that's after the catalytic converter, and basically I think the upstream is before the catalytic converter and downstream is after the catalytic converter, and you can watch the numbers and what they're doing. And as I understand it, the one that's upstream, which is just after the engine, is supposed to move about quite a lot, which you can see where the mouse arrow is. It's jumping between sort of in the 70s right down to 12 and 6, whereas you'll see the one I've got highlighted blue is staying much higher up and stabilising around sort of 60s and 70s. Now it's moving about a little bit more than our 75, but it is visibly, one is quite low and then quite high, whereas the other one is staying quite high all the time, which is what I think it's meant to do, and it's a good check to see if both are working. Now I think the one after the catalytic converter is purely to check the catalytic converter's working properly, and if it gets wrong readings it assumes there's a problem and brings on your dash light, so it's well worth one checking. Again, I've recorded this one because we know that the dash light doesn't come on because of this, so I thought I'd record this so we can compare it against our car where we do appear to have an sort of warning code suggesting that that's a problem. And you do need the engine running and warmed up, because I've noticed that these figures are stabilising a lot more with the engine at a steady rev and warmed up, so that is obviously what you need as well. So it's giving us a chance to play about and learn with that one to try and help diagnose that fault where every so often that ECU light comes on and we get a code telling us that that could be the problem. I'll show you that code when we are in that car. Next thing we want to look at is the ABS, and what we do, we click on the ABS and then once again look down at our little key code, and it's saying ABS for the 45s, all of them, and that's the ZS's as well, is the ABS 5.3. so if we have a little look and see if we can find that there. These lists seem to stay the same, you just have to pick the one you're using. So ABS 5.3, and we'll click next. I did cover this in the other one. Up here you've got both. I leave that at both, and if you wanted to log live data, you select that, select a file, and if live data is available it will log it in a little chart. But we found it's easier to just photograph or film, but you can do that as well, and I've no doubt there are quite some uses for that as well. So we click next, and I've found once you've done the procedure once of turning the ignition on and off that it wants, it then seems to stay connected for all of these procedures. But if you wait a long time, sometimes you do have to do it to access the management system. So it looks like it wants us to turn the ignition back on, because I turned it off for when we turn the engine off. So we'll just have to go through that procedure again. So I'll click next as the ignition is off. It'll get us to wait. Turn the ignition back on. Click next, and hopefully it'll log us back in. Yeah, I shouldn't have turned the ignition off, but again that just shows you it's not a big issue. We've gone through the procedure and it's let us back in. You can get information about the ABS. Sometimes that's available, sometimes it's not. And then what we do is read the error codes. There's no error codes there, so we don't need to erase them, and we can go back. So that's pretty good for that one. And I don't think you get live data for the airbags that we're doing next, but the ABS you do get live data. if you want, but again, I think unless you're using the car, you'll just get sort of still numbers of what everything's doing. Actually, we can go back and have a look at the live data for the ABS system. So it's just going to log us in again and take us there. If we do have a little look at the live data and click the plus button, it'll show you what live data is available. But as I said, all the figures are the same, but what it would allow you to do is turn the wheels and check that you're getting data, and if one of them wasn't working, you'd hopefully be able to see which one was causing you the problem, which is quite useful. That's the little sensors on each wheel. So we'll come back out of that now and do what I said we were going to do, which next is the airbags. So click on the airbags, go down to our little chart down here, and this is the one that depends on your VIN. Now, because this is an 03, I found that it's the second one, which is the one starting with AB there, and it looks like it's already naturally on that one. So we'll click that and then click next. And we'll wait for it to do the check. I'm leaving all this in because it gives you an idea of how long things take, so you know if there's a problem or not a problem, basically. There we go, it's let us in. Again, there's an information button. Read the codes, you can erase the codes, and I think live data isn't available for airbags, which I can understand because they're either working or not, I would have thought. No codes there, which is good. So we'll come back out of that one. And the last thing is the alarm and immobilizer, which is one of the main reasons for buying this software for the 45s, because what it does is it will give us that emergency access code, and it will also let us tune new key rings in if they go wrong, you know, the little lock and unlock buttons, and you can also match up the alarm system immobilizer to the engine ECU. You can match them, and I talked about that in part 1 and showed you those units. So if we have a little look at that now, the first thing we need to do is select the right one, and once again we'll look at our chart, and it is for a particular VIN, the 5AS, which I know is in-house because we've not got the Petron system in any of our 45s, which we're glad, because when we initially bought our first one, we didn't necessarily know there was a difference, and I think the 5AS system is a bit easier to tune the key rings in and things, but you can do it with the Petron, and there is a video on how to do that through pscan. So if we click on next, and you've got information. You can read the emergency access code, which is the one we want for this car. You can match the ECU to the MEMS system, the engine management system, and again you can get live data as well. So the first thing we're going to do is read this code, because that's the code we've been looking for, and it's going to check it there. And there it's come up with a code, and what I've done is covered it up. You get a top code that it says is for 25s, ZRs and MGFs, and then a lower code. Now, because we've got other cars, we've checked both codes, and it's the lower code that has matched up with the emergency access code that we've got written down for them. So we're going to assume it's the bottom code, but I will take a photograph and have both codes with me in case that is a problem. But yeah, I thought I'd cover that up just in case it's an issue. I don't think it really is, but I'll cover it up just to be sure. So what we do is come back out of that now, and we click on where you match up the engine management system with the alarm immobilizer system. We're not going to do that. There's no reason for us to do it, and you don't want to muck about with things you don't need to. But I've just gone in there to let you see what it looks like, and if you wanted to do that, you'll look it up. And if we ever have to do it, then I would of course cover it. You've got the live data, which is quite useful because it'll tell you about your door switches and boot switches, and also about the little motion sensor. So again, if you've got any problems with those, you'll be able to see them and have a little look. So if we come back out of there, the last thing you've got is programming your key fobs, and again, we're not going to do that because we don't need them, but there are instructions that come up with this, and you can get them through the website as well. But that's the page that's there for that. So yeah, a very, very useful area of this software, because it's something you can't really do without this software, and I don't think there's many other systems about that will let you do that. Not as sort of easy to access and use as far as I'm aware. So we'll come back out of that, and hopefully that's showed you everything that this can access on a 45, and it's also showed you the reason that we have plugged into this particular 45. And we've got a couple of things we want to do on other 45, so I'm going to move across to them and show you us doing that and accessing them. So we've now moved over to our Rover 45 1.6 2003, and as I said earlier on in this video, and I think even in part one, the thing we wanted to look at on this is that sometimes the engine warning light comes on, and I'll show you that in a minute, and it doesn't go off. Now, because this is a 2003, we have been able to use our earlier basic code reader on it, and that comes up with a code that basically says, when you look it up on the internet, that the lambda sensor, there's two of them on this, the oxygen sensor, you're getting a wrong reading, possibly due to a catalytic converter problem. That's what basically the error code says. Now, we want to do some live testing on it and find out a little bit more. The interesting thing is, when you clear the code, sometimes it doesn't come back for quite a while. Now, I do know that even if the problem is there, the car has to drive a little way before that engine warning light will come back on, and that's because basically it's monitoring the sort of emissions that it's looking for, the oxygen saturation in the mixture, and obviously there's going to be times when that's not going to be right, especially when the car's just started up, so it won't instantly bring the engine warning light on for that. But if it sees that problem prolonged in normal driving conditions, then it brings that engine light on. Interesting enough, when you do an emissions test on this car, it doesn't show any problems up, and it also doesn't show anything up on an MOT emissions problem either. And as I said, sometimes the light doesn't always come back on for quite a time, so I assume the fault is very much on the borderlines. Now, in my research, and hopefully you see in the earlier part of this video, that what we did when we ran the other cars was come down to the live data on the engine management system and showed how that one lambda sensor, oxygen sensor, which is just on the exhaust after the engine, that goes up and down the readings on that, and they're meant to do that as far as I understand. But after the catalytic converter, once the engine is warm and running steady revs a bit above tick over, that one should be much more steady, almost completely steady, and as we showed you on the 45 and also in the 75 video, that is the case. So it'll be very interesting to see what those readings are, and that'll tell us whether there's a sensor problem or there is something it's sensing that's not quite right, but it must be very, very borderline. But it'd be interesting to see whether we do see the readings, as my research shows, that on this car with the error code, you're getting an up and down reading on both sensors, whereas it should be up and down on the one just after the engine, and the sensor just after the catalytic converter should be much more stable. So we'll have to see if this one is that case, which will kind of confirm that initial reading that comes up on that basic fault code reader. So what we do, we'll open up the pscan and we'll have a little look at that, and also show you us clearing the codes, which will initially remove that engine light as well. So as with all our other cars, I've gone through all the different modules and took a little photo of any fault codes, and if there is none, then I've also took that photo to log at that particular date. That's how things were looking. As always, we're using our little key down there that I've printed off of the internet, the pscan website, and that's just a quick reference for me really, so that I can easily look up what module is the right one for ease of using the software. And if you can see here, these are the two error codes on our 1.6. There we go, it's focused in. You'll see one of them there is the catalyst system efficiency below the threshold, bank 1. Now, I think bank 1 is to do with if you had like the V6 engine, you've got two exhausts going into one, you'd have like bank 1 and bank 2, but on these cars there is only the one exhaust from the 4 cylinders, so it is just bank 1. But as I said, when I've looked it up, that error code could be that. We've had no way of really test it. Now, looking at the live data, we should be able to see if what I've researched actually matches with why we're sometimes getting that fault code. And you get the engine light staying on. There's the ignition on. Your engine light will be on with the ignition, but when the engine is running, that will stay on until you clear it. Then, as I say, sometimes it'll be a short time, which is normal for the engine to work out there's a problem, and then bring it on. Other times it does last a little bit longer. So what we do is start up the engine and have a little look at the live data. And as you can see there, the engine light remains on, and we will clear that anyway. But this will just be a nice little test. Long term, we will have to try and sort out, as I said, because when we do our own emissions tests and the MOT emission test doesn't see a problem, it must be either something is a little bit sensitive on this car, or it is very much on the borderline as to why it's for some reason picking up that error code. Right, so we've got the engine running at a steady revs, and you can see all the oxygen sensors, or what we sometimes call the lambda sensor, and all their readings. And as far as I understand, the ones you want to look at is the upstream, which I think is, you know, just after the engine, and the downstream to me is the one that's after the catalytic converter. So you can see the one in blue is the upstream, and that is going from sort of a high number right down to a low number, sort of 08, and then it's going to slowly climb right up very, very shortly, hopefully. Yeah, there you go, up to 76. So that seems to be very similar to the other cars. What is different is where you can see the mouse arrow. That seems to be hovering at a more sort of mid-range and lower. Now, from what I remember from the other cars, that voltage where the mouse arrow was tends to stay more in sort of the 70s and 80s, whilst the other one drops right down low and high. Whereas here, the only difference I can see is that it's now we've gone up there. But it has dropped down again, yeah. So really, if you kind of look at it, it is saying what we researched, that the second one should say stable. On 2 of our cars in our tests it did, whereas here it is kind of going up and down, like the one in the blue, the one straight after the engine. So that would suggest in some ways that fault code is right. Now whether that is the sensor's not quite working right, or it is working right and the readings are, you know, not stabilising, that we're not quite sure of at the moment. But it's certainly, this software is very useful because it's letting us do a test in a way that we couldn't very easily do before. So I'm just recording that a bit for our own records as well as for you to see as well, and show you how in this scenario this could be very useful to you. Yeah, the engine's run at a steady revs now for quite a time, like our other cars, and they're both going up and down, whereas as we say, as far as I understood in the research, one should go up and down the numbers whilst the other one stabilises at a steady rev when the engine is warm, and those 2 cars did that, and this one isn't. So that gets us a step further to our diagnosis, and it also lets you see how this software can show you that if you're trying to do that sort of diagnosis. But it is very, very interesting because in emissions tests there appears to be very, very little difference. We just take the engine off of tick over there, and what we do, we're going, and I'll just show you us clearing the fault codes and how that engine light does go out. But as I say, eventually it does come back on, even if sometimes it is quite a time. So I assume we are very much on the limits, but it's doing it enough that the engine, when it does sort of a long-term monitoring, will eventually bring that light back on. So yeah, we've done what we wanted to do initially with this software on this car, is to investigate that fault code a little bit more and see if my research did actually match what was happening. And as I say, there could be other reasons for that fault code, as I understand, but that's the most likely, and it, in my research, said that is what you will probably see, and that is what we are seeing, those numbers not stabilised. Now we've gone back to tick over, so that is going to change a little bit. This is just a little bit interesting. Just before we look at those fault codes, you can see there the throttle, and you've got 1 and 2, and they both say close. Well, if I pick the revs up, you'll see that those close will change to open. So you can see there that the computer is getting the message, or the ECU is getting the message that the throttle is being pressed, and that is probably a very quick reference to see if you've got a particular problem, whether the computer is seeing the throttle being opened and closed. So yeah, I just thought I'd show you that. What we do is we're come out of the live data now and go back to those error codes. The other one I think is probably just a little sort of problem. Again, I think often some of these sorts can be made by sort of a low battery at any time, or there could be something very small that causes it. So that's just one we're keeping on, and when we do a test after the car being used once again, we'll see if that one appears back or not. So as we've shown you with before, we'll erase the codes. It comes up to confirm, which I really do like, and they are all erased. So that engine warning light will be off, and we'll see how long this time it takes to come back on, and if the fault code is still there, and investigate a little bit more. But as I say, it must be very much on the borderlines, and I assume sometimes it does stabilise and work as it should do, for it to take a long time for that to come back on, or sometimes not to come back on for a period of time. But luckily it's shown us what I'd expected it might do from the research we'd done, and kind of confirmed that. So we found that very, very useful. The last thing we're going to do is move on to our green car, to have a little look at the airbag lights, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, and I've kind of explained a little bit earlier on once we're sitting in that car. Right, so we've now moved cars and we're in our Rover 45 2001 green with the nice light cream upholstery, and it's one of the cars we upholstered the doors, and also we reupholstered the roof line as well. And if you'd like to see that video, then have a look at our channel, and you can scroll back. It was this year earlier on, and you can see the videos on how we did the roof liner and the door cards, reupholster them. It's well worth having a look, and I just thought I'd mention that as well while we're sitting in this car. Of course, in the last clip we were in our 2003 Rover 45, the 1600, and we have that error code about the catalyst below efficiency, and we're talking about what to do. And it's now been a couple of days, and I think it's always good not to make a rash decision, and it's been a problem we've been aware of for a time, so we're not in any rush to sort it out, but obviously we do want to sort it out. We know the catalytic converter isn't breaking up or breaking down, and as I said, emissions tests show it to be well in emissions. So I think the first thing we'd probably do if we do start investigating is perhaps change that lambda sensor, although we think it's unlikely. I think it's worth changing that before you change the catalytic converter to see if the problem persists, and also check the heater circuits are working, which again, once the car's warmed up, the heater in the oxygen sensor shouldn't be an issue, but we do know from experience with a Metro and the lambda sensor where the heater relay was faulty, and you used to get you'd get it through emissions with a new lambda sensor, but then a year later when you come to do the MOT, it would fail. You'd put a new one in and it would work. So there are issues, and that's what we found out to be the problem in the end, that the relay that brought that little heater in wasn't working, and once we changed that relay, we never had the problem again. So sometimes a sort of a new one and checking there's no problems there, it's a job to really know what's causing that little error code, but we've certainly got the time to investigate it because it's not affecting the way the car runs, and the car's still up to emission levels as well. So it's why we've got time to sort out, and I've no doubt we'll cover a video when we do. So the reason we're in this car, and I think we have mentioned it, and this was the car that I initially tried the software out in before I started filming, so we have had a look at this car, but I thought I'd cover it because again, this was one of the other reasons for getting this software. And the fault with this car is that if you move the front passenger or driver's seat forwards, I don't know which one causes it, but the airbag light comes on, and then if you fiddle about with the wires or unplug them, plug them back in, or move the seat backwards and forwards again, that airbag light goes out. So we'd like to know which seat is possibly causing that. It could be both seats have got an error code there in the airbags. Another good test is that a fair few years ago, this seat belt here on the passenger side had to be changed because it started to just lock all the time, so that may have given an error code. And also, of course, in the steering wheel you've got an airbag, and the way the wiring gets through the movement of the steering wheel is a clock spring, and when we got this car that was actually broken, and it had caused the horn to not work, the little steering controls, and I think it had caused an airbag problem as well. So we're wondering if all that's been stored, because it again see a fault with this airbag because that wiring was damaged in the clock spring that sits just behind here in the steering wheel. And there is a video on how to change that if you do have those problems. You find you've got an airbag light because of that, or the horn doesn't work, or your steering controls don't work. There is a video on our channel on how to change that, so that's well worth checking out as well. So if we come over to our pscan, and we selected airbags, and this is the one, once again we're using the chart down here, and it's the one where it depends on your VIN which module is in your car, and we know because this is an earlier VIN 2000s, it's the top one. So we'll click on that, and we'll gain access and have a little look at the fault codes, because it'd be interesting to see if it logged those. It may ask us to turn the ignition on, so we'll just go through that process as well. Yep, so it wants us to turn the ignition off. The ignition's already off, so we'll click next. And we'll turn the ignition on. And we'll click next. That's given us access straight away. So we'll have a little look at those error codes and see what it's logged. Yeah, so we've got the driver's front airbag circuit open, and we know that that was because of that clock spring going wrong. The voltage too low on the second one down is likely that there's been a low battery, and it's logged that. What else have we got? Yeah, so it's logging a problem with both seats. So obviously, at different times when you move the seats forward, they're both a problem. But it was interesting to see, because we want to see whether it's one particular seat that caused that or both. It looks like it's both. So the long-term fix we found is to unplug it, put a bit of contact cleaner in and plug it back in. That seems to last the longest, but it does come back. I suppose you could wire out those plugs, but I think that's more of a disadvantage than you know, sort of having to sort out. And we're lucky this system resets itself, so once the faulty component or broken wire's gone, the airbag light goes off on its own, so you don't have to reset it, although we've now got the computer to wipe those codes out. And it looks like the front left open circuit on the seat belt, which is the seat belt we changed at the front. So yeah, that's very useful. That although the airbag was when we first got it, so you're talking at least 7 years ago now, and the seatbelt must be a good 3 years ago, so it's remembered those faults and kept them logged for all that time. So that's very, very useful. So that's really all we wanted to do in this green car, was really to sort of, again, to get used to the software. Perhaps a good test, and we've considered this a test, is we know they were faults. We know we've solved them, because on other cars some of the faults come up could have been things that other people had solved. We don't know. This one, we know they are definitely faults we've had since we've had it, and they're faults we know we can sort out, like the seats and the seat airbags, side airbags, and we know that the driver's front airbag and the seatbelt were both problems that were sorted out as I've explained. So that's a good test for the software on how long it keeps those codes, and that it did log those codes, and we know we sorted them out. So we'll delete that along with the other codes and make a fresh start with this car. Oh, so while we're still in our 2001 1.4 green 45, I just thought I'd show this. I know we've covered this before, looking at the 45s, and this is in the body control Immobilizer section. You've got the live data, and what this does is lets you see which switches are working. So like your door switch, which is quite important. The door switch is the boot switch and the bonnet switch, and as you can see at the moment I've got the driver's door switch highlighted, because that's how the alarm knows if a door's been opened and would fire the alarm. Now I'm assuming if you use your interior light, you'd be able to test that sort of switch as well. certainly on the doors, but we tend to not use the interior light, and this is a good little check to make sure they're all working, because I think essentially if they fail, it is like the door is closed all the time, because that's when the circuit is kind of open, or the connection is not made, and then when you open the door, the switch essentially makes contact, or makes an earth contact, and completes the circuit, so it knows the door is open. So as you can see on the driver's door, because I've got it too, it's low. So if I just open the driver's door now completely and put my hand in and find the switch, if you look at the one that's highlighted in blue, if I pull the switch, that changes to high, so that's like the door is closed, and if I let it go, it's low, and that shows that the door is essentially been opened. So that means that switch is working as it should do. But you'll notice that the passenger door switch has also got low, and this door is completely closed and locked, as you can see. So I'll pull that lock up and open that door. There's absolutely no change at all, which there won't be, because low, it believes it's open and it's closed. So obviously that switch isn't working at the moment, so that's something we need to look into, because it essentially means if that door's opened when the alarm was set, it essentially wouldn't go off. Now obviously there's the central lock and you've got the motion sensor as well, but it's certainly useful to be aware of, and certainly know. And if we have a little look at the boot switch next, I'll just find our mouse and look at the boot switch. However, that's saying high, because once again the boot is closed. If I reach down to the little boot latch and pull it, you've seen it's changed to low, so that lets us know that the little switch on the boot is definitely working. So there's quite some useful little tests that the live data shows you in that sort of body control alarm unit. So if I just click back, you'll see where we are. We're in the 5AS system, and we went to live data to access that. So yeah, I just thought I'd cover that as something a little bit useful. We're now going to move over to our Blue 2045, because there's something we want to have a look at on there. Again, another little test where we know there's been a problem. We want to see if it's logged it. Right, so we've now moved to our Rover 45 1.4 Blue 2000, and we've got all our pscan connected in, and the reason I thought we'd finish up having a look at the pscan codes in this car is, well, basically we've done all the same. We've gone through all the codes and photographed them, so we've got a record. But the reason we want to look at this car is because a couple of months ago we were working on the car and we had the engine running, which means the wheels slightly turn if you put it in gear, and we were testing the gearbox after the clutch. You may have watched the clutch video that it would just go into gear, and we had them running. I think we put our foot on the brake to cause a little bit of resistance, and basically it brought the ABS light on because we think it sensed an imbalance in the wheel movement. So the wheels, you know, one wheel was moving whilst one wasn't, and we had an MOT coming up, so we knew it wouldn't get through with that light on. We didn't have this computer to clear the fault codes and bring the light off, and in the end we said, well, we'll have to drive it to the MOT and I hope it clears itself, because we think, you know, why we've brought it on. The lucky enough up the road it cleared itself and the light went out. So one, it would have been useful to have been able to clear it, because we didn't definitely know it would do that, but I just thought we'd have a look to see if it logged that as a fault code, or because it cleared it didn't even log it, because technically the fault wasn't there. It depends, but we know with stuff like the airbags, even when you've solved the problem, the faults are still there. So if we have a little look, we've clicked on the ABS, and it's the ABS 5 8.3, so we've got all that selected. So if we go into that, now obviously we've done all the stuff we've done to get it sorted out and logged in and all that, and we've shown that before, so we'll just go straight in and do its checks and bring everything up. There we are, we're into the ABS. So if we have a little look at the error code, oh, that's interesting, it's showing no codes there. So although we got an ABS light which it cleared, I assume because it then found no issues as such, it hasn't logged it as a code. So that's quite interesting. So well, it shows we definitely caused it by what we did. It cleared itself. We would have been able to have cleared it, I assume, because there would have been an error up with that ABS light coming on, and it hasn't logged it as a code either. So that's a useful thing to know in the future. If we have a little look at the live data for the ABS while we're there. Again, I'll click the plus button to make them all appear. The minus button will make certain parameters disappear. If you click for all the live data disappears. So click that plus button again, and it tells you where all the wheel sensors are, which again, they're all reading the same and all getting a reading. So I'm assuming that probably tells you that they are working okay, which they must be because that ABS light went off. But yeah, I thought I'd just finish up there to have a look, because again, we knew there was a problem, we knew we'd solved it. Let's see if there is a fault code logged. In this case, for whatever reason, it didn't log that fault code. Hopefully you found this second part of the video useful, looking at the 45s and what can be accessed and the parameters. Again, we haven't gone into tuning in any of the key rings because we don't need to do it. And as I said at the beginning of the video, we're not going to do something we don't need to do. But if we do need to do it, then we'll film it. So hopefully part 1 and part 2. Of course, part 1 we talked in general and looked at the 75 and had a little look through. And then in part 2, you've seen us in I think all 4 45s, us having a general look at the codes in one, and then showing specific reasons for accessing the computer systems within the car and seeing particular fault codes. So thank you very much for watching. It's been a very detailed video, but I wanted it to be that so that you could look in general at what it can do. If you've got a specific problem, maybe that detail will help you, and it's also good as a record for us to look through. Yeah, I thought I'd just add to that as part of finishing this video off as well. I just want to say a big thank you to pscan for being happy for me to do these videos and answering all the questions that I had. We've certainly found the software very, very useful, and actually it's more simpler and easier to use than I thought, and less glitchy as well, because although you can see little bits online, you never really know till you use it yourself and get used to using it and finding what's going to be useful for you and finding out how easy or difficult it is to use and install. And we're certainly very, very happy with the way it works, and we're certainly happy we put it on this little XP laptop. That certainly made it a lot easier for us. So yeah, I thought I'd just cover that. So for now, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to check out all our other videos. It's well worth a look through. Of course, we've got Instagram and an X Twitter page as well.